Hello, today we're going to talk about rate of perceived exertion. How many of you have ever tried running, right? Like out of the gate, you haven't ran for a while and you get going and you try, like even as a kid, you try to keep up, you gas out and you're like, this sucks, this is horrible, right? Or maybe we have a project to do, whether it's in work or school, or we join a gym or we start training and we really want this result. We're highly motivated. So we put everything in. I mean, we go all in. We put everything we can into that. Everything around us now, right? Social media, double down, 10X, grind, like all this stuff. Sleep when I'm dead. It's kind of ridiculous, right? There's no joy in that. And we're conditioned that way. We're conditioned to just be workhorses. And what I want to share with you is it doesn't have to be that way for you to maximize your results and keep them long term. So what I want to talk about is rate of perceived exertion. And the way we're going to discuss it is on a scale of 1 to 10. Okay, 1 to 10. Now, as you can imagine, and let's say 0's over there too. We got a 0. 0 is like you're sleeping. You're not doing much. Like you're very calm and you're relaxed. And let's say 1 is standing up. Like you're standing and you're looking around and like you're just having a conversation, you're standing. Let's say 3 is like a leisurely walk, just a casual walk. 5 is going to be where you can still talk. You're moving a little bit quicker. So you might be breathing a little bit heavier. You might be a really fast-paced walk or a really light jog, but you can still carry a conversation. Now let's go to 7. 7 is you're going to be speaking in bursts. Most of your attention is going to be on your movement or the task that you're doing at hand. It's going to require your attention because your output is high. And your conversations, you're not going to be able to just carry a conversation. It's going to be too much because your body's going to require too much oxygen. Okay, so you can't just go putting that back out in the world. Your body needs it. And then a 9 and a 10 is everything you got. 100% focus. You're not talking. It's a very short burst, 100% intensity. If you go anything longer than maybe 10 or 15 seconds, you're probably going to throw up. I mean, all in, like incredible levels of intensity. What happens a lot of the time when we get started, and we don't know what we don't know, we come in and we push ourselves too hard, too quick. Now, here's the problem with that. Let's say you were able to do that before, and over time we've become deconditioned. Maybe you've never done it before, and our body isn't necessarily deconditioned, but it's not prepared for the workload that we're going to be putting into it. A lot happens beneath the surface. Our respiratory system, our cardiorespiratory system, is going to develop much faster than the connective tissue in our body. So if we do things that require a lot of high repetition, say like running, jumping rope, jogging, those types of things, high impact sort of work, or heavy weightlifting, where we're lifting heavy quickly, and we don't give our connective tissue the opportunity to adapt at the same time, it's going to lead to injury, okay? If we push ourselves too hard and our cardiorespiratory and cardiovascular system can't keep up, we're going to be constantly out of breath. Our body's not going to be able to absorb the oxygen that we need in order to continue the exercise and find joy in that and ultimately reap the benefits and everything that comes along with that, both in terms of adaptation and hormonally. So, the feel-good hormones, everything that comes along with it. Now, if we're constantly punishing ourselves by pushing too hard, and under the surface, we're constantly damaging ourselves in ways that are ultimately going to lead to an injury, chances are that's not a good place to be, right? If we're moving too fast too soon, probably not good. So why do we do it? Well, it's glorified, and at a certain level, for a certain level client or athlete or individual, that's where they need to be, right? There's a continuum in terms of training. Most people start too hard, not too soft. They don't ease their way in. They go way too hard. Now, I'm not saying baby steps all the way. You're going to have to challenge yourself. That's how you adapt. But that familiarity inside of your body is what ultimately is going to make a difference. So back to rate of perceived exertion. When we're getting started, okay, or you're training, there's 2 ways I want you to look at it. In terms of a general training program, general fitness, you want to keep it somewhere between a 6 and a 7. 6 is the upper level of comfort. 7 is the first level of challenge. Okay? It's a great place to be. Now, in the beginning, it's going to be more of mental focus and dialing things in, and it is probably going to be slow. It's probably going to be more of a 3 to 5. Very slow, very deliberate, learning that and dialing it into your nervous system and your ability and adaptation. Now, let's say you've been training for a while or you're training for something in particular. There's a couple of different ways we want to look at that. One, again, your base should be on the base of challenge compared to what it is that you're going to be doing. So let's say there's a lot of runners in our group, okay? So let's say I'm an endurance runner, 50 miles, 100 miles, or even I'm working on, 5K, 10Ks for speed, half marathon or marathon for goals, okay? Well, the very first things we want to work on are, can we do it well? Do we have the mobility and mechanics and the movement in order to do those exercises well? If the answer is yes, then we move to C, consistency. Can we do them consistently? If the answer is yes, then we go to I, which is intensity, which is rate of perceived exertion. If we don't have the previous two, rate of perceived exertion isn't going to do much good because we don't have the underlying factors in place yet. It doesn't mean you can't do it. Doesn't mean you can't. You can. But we want to make sure you're doing it right first. That's what allows you to enjoy these things. Right? If it's punishment for the next 13.1 miles, it's going to be pretty hard. But if you can enjoy it, your breathing as well, your rate of perceived exertion is where you've been training and where you want to be, that's the sweet spot. So you get the most from it. Get from the situation, not through the situation. So back to our rate of perceived exertion. If we're training, and let's say we know we're going to be doing a half marathon, and we gauge our rate of perceived exertion as we go through our training. So let's say up to 6 miles, it's like a 5. We're really good, right? Then we get to a place where let's say it's, up to 9 miles. It's like 7.5. Much more challenging, requires much more concentration. Times are changing a little bit. Maybe we're slowing down, depending on how long you've been doing it. Maybe your pace is set and you're great, but let's say we're new. And then we're towards the end, right? And we're like, it's like an 8.5 or 9. Maybe our hips are a little sore. We feel a little nagging pain in the calf. We're kind of gasping for air. Maybe we didn't fuel up. There's a lot of different things that can contribute to that, right? And it sounds like a pretty punishing situation. Not saying that's the case, right? But it may be, depending on how far you're pushing yourself. So what does that have to do with rate of perceived exertion? Well, as you know, like I mentioned, we're at like a 5 and then a 7, 7.5, 8, and then, close to a 9 towards the end. And let's say we want to lower that. So when we do the activities we enjoy, we can reduce how hard it is on our body. Rate of perceived exertion in training. When you're training and let's say you're here in our class or you're training on your own, and let's say we're going to be training at our sweet spot, 6 to 7. Now that's 6 to 7 when you're training and we're thinking of total output. That output is going to be more than what you're used to for that first 6 miles, okay? So the better your body gets at those movements in terms of rate of perceived exertion, even in shorter bouts, the overall rate of perceived exertion will reduce. So we compress that with intensity, and then as we draw it back out, the rate of perceived exertion reduces itself, so we have more to put out. So I hope that makes sense. The key takeaway here is if you're in general fitness, stay between 6 and 7 unless otherwise instructed, okay? If you're training for an event, be aware of your rate of perceived exertion at each part of your process, at each milestone. If you're a runner, do it on the mile, okay? Then when you come and train, you're going to be able to train at a higher level of rate of perceived exertion based on those 3 components. 1, do you have the mobility and mechanics? If you don't, then that's where your intensity focuses, right? Everything goes there. From there, if you have that, then you go to consistency. Can you do it well for that duration of time at a higher level of intensity with a range of motion? And then last, your intensity itself. How do you increase your output based on your training? So take those components, marinate a little bit on that. Think about what you want to do, whether it's general fitness or it's output. And, leave a comment below because I'd love to hear what you're training and how this applies and how you're using it right now if you're already using it. So thank you for watching the video. I hope it helped. Rate of perceived exertion, 1 to 10. Have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you soon.